do I want to be right or do I want to be a part of a team?
This is the Leadership Foundry podcast. I'm your host this week, Brandon Smith. And our guest this week is Navid Ahdieh. Navid is the Managing Director and Global Leader of Strategy and Management Consulting for North Highland Consulting. He's been with North Highland for 19 years and in consulting for 25 years. And I just loved my conversation with Navid. It was absolutely fantastic because when we talked more about leadership and how he evolved, what I learned was so much about his story, both leaving Iran early with his family when he was very young and coming to the United States, and how that changed not only how he viewed his life, but how he viewed himself as a leader, and how that led to some of the items around self-awareness and even leadership philosophies that he developed. So I know you're going to enjoy his story. Listen close to some of those elements that he shares with us today. And of course, stay tuned to the very end, and I will share with you some of the highlights I took away. Navid, really excited to have you on the show, my friend.
Thank you, Brandon.
Yeah, I'm thrilled to hear not only kind of your journey, because I know pieces and parts, but not the whole thing.
Okay.
But for this show, the Leadership Foundry show, we really spotlight leaders' learnings. What were the things that you kind of learned along the way that really shaped you as a leader that you think would be really valuable for our listeners and other leaders listening?
I can't wait to share.
Yeah, so maybe a good starting place.
Okay.
So share a little bit with the listeners about your current role today.
Sure.
And then let's go back in time. Let's do a little flashback in time and talk about kind of what was the journey that got you into the seat you're in today.
Okay, you got it. All right, so let's do this. So I'm coming up on 25 years in management strategy consulting. So it's a big milestone for me.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
Time.
Thank you.
That's a lot of sky miles.
It really is. We've taken some good trips, so we've put those miles to use. It was a very unexpected career. So it's tough to say 25 years. How's that unexpected? Nothing prior to starting my career in consulting would have led anyone to believe that I would become a consultant one day. So I always trained to be a doctor, scientist, public health practitioner. That was my passion, and just a bump in the road along that journey led to Plan B, Plan B or Plan C. I think I had a couple of other options, and I tested out consulting. So that and it stuck.
So do you remember your first project? Do you remember what you worked on when you first started consulting?
I do not remember my first project, Brandon. You've already gotten my brain wrapped to go in reverse, so I'm just going to go in reverse as opposed to from beginning to end. We might be able to get there, though. So let me tell you a little bit about what I'm doing right now. Is that good? Okay.
Perfect.
So I've been serving as a managing director at North Highland for the past 5 years. I've been with North Highland. It'll be 19 years in April. I've had a long stretch here.
North Highland 19?
Very long time. Yeah, wow. It's been an amazing ride. So what managing directors overall do at North Highland is care for the growth of our people, care for the growth of our business, the growth and evolution. I would say the two things there. I focus quite a bit on evolving our services, our tools, what we bring to bear to our clients and to our people so that work can get done better, more effectively, in a more connected, engaged, data-driven way. So that's really been my primary focus over the last 5 years serving as a managing director. The role that I'm in right now, over the past, I think I'm celebrating 1 year of being in this role, is I serve as the global head of strategy and management consulting. Overall, that's the largest segment of our business in terms of people. I'm the first, very proud of this opportunity. I'm the first executive of color to serve in this role since the beginning of North Highland. So it's been a huge opportunity for me to change some things, evolve some things, and create opportunities for folks in the context of representation matters.
Yeah.
So I feel like I've taken a pretty good advantage of that opportunity. So stepping back from that is, I would say, another total of 20 years of consulting where I've learned a lot about myself, whether it's through project work or through lots of feedback or executive coaching. I know, Brandon, you've been a big part of helping North Highlanders evolve their careers. So it's it really the first 20 leading up to the last 5 is probably the most intense period of learning for me in terms of leadership skills. Intense again, as it really relates to self-awareness and recognizing how my actions and my thoughts translate into impact for other people and how that shapes their careers.
So I want to dig into that kind of self-awareness, but before I do that, not everyone who goes into management consulting says, one day I want to ascend up into more of a people leadership role. Yeah. You've clearly been very intentional to want to do that. Yes. Was there a moment where you said, I like kind of the people component of my job. I like caring for people, developing them, or was there another way that you ended up in that path? I think part of it is having others around you that care enough about your development to guide you in the directions that you may not see for yourself. I'm fairly certain, now I'm going back to your earlier question, do I remember my first project? I entered the consulting profession as more of a creator or maker of things, having that mind of a scientist. Yeah. I felt that the right thing for me to do was become technically proficient in being a consultant. Okay. What others over the years found in me was that, that's good. You can do that, but the way you can affect change in how other people work, how they behave, how they focus on their careers, how they find fulfillment, is far more powerful than my technical aptitude. So it was the things that other leaders saw in me that I did not see in myself that created a lot of opportunity for me to move into more of the manager versus maker type of opportunity and roles. Yeah. Nice. So you mentioned self-awareness. Sounds like you had several kind of moments that you said, something interesting about myself. I either want to honor and lift up, or I might want to make adjustments or change. Yeah. What were some of those? Yeah.
So the things that let's start with vulnerability. I'll share some of the things that were not serving me well. So it was a bumpy road getting into making it through. You're right. 25 years in consulting is a long time, right? There's a lot of bumpiness and a lot of self-reflection that goes along with that. It wasn't a straight line. My career is more defined by a series of certainly upward moves, but also lateral moves, where I've learned more and more about what I'm best at and how I can make the best impact on others. A challenge that I had was the narratives that I would create for myself, or the stories that I would tell myself around why certain things are the way they are, right? I found, what I found and discovered was that was incredibly unproductive, right? I was kind of swimming in some negativity whenever I would hit these bumps in the road, and the longer I stayed in those moments, the longer it took for me to find that next pivot point that led to new opportunities. So one of my earlier learnings was just to get out of my own head, get out of this practice of overthinking and creating these narratives around why I think certain decisions were made, whether it was a performance review that I didn't feel was fair, or a promotion that I missed out on. As I became more and more proficient, none of this would happen without getting coaching, both internal coaching and external coaching. As I learned to get out of my own head faster, I found that I could move on to that next success or that next area of opportunity faster.
So for people who are listening, I think we can all relate to having those moments where we may place, assumption around something, which, by the way, as consultants, you're trained to do, right? Yep. We don't have data on this. Well, we need to place an assumption as a placeholder for that. Mm-hmm. So you place assumptions on something, but the assumptions may have a negative edge to it, or may have another bias to it.
Sure.
And we're all guilty of that. We've all done it before. What's a way we can stop ourselves? What did you learn that kind of helped you, as you said, kind of get out of that quicker?
Yeah, it's physically stop yourself. Stop yourself from sending that email that just all of a sudden, feels like you can just pour everything in your mind. It turns into an email that's maybe 2 or 3 pages long, and you feel that you have really encapsulated the totality of the injustice that you've experienced or that's going on. Stop and just stop doing that. Even if you need to write it and then just hit delete or send it to your draft box, don't send it. Just sit in the moment, sit in that discomfort long enough to just allow a more peaceful mind to process what you've just experienced, right? And what I find is I'm coaching others, and as I relate challenges other people have to the challenges I have, if you have a fix-it-all mentality, right? I've got to fix everything. Every flaw is something that has to be addressed, whether it's about me or others. Every bit of feedback is something that I have to immediately, again, urgently fix, right? Or else, something is going to happen. Something catastrophic is going to happen. That personality type, or whatever you want to call it, those require the most, I think, intense. Just take a moment, pause. More self-restraint, because our natural wiring is jump in there and do it, fix it, get my hands dirty. And you got it. Yeah, and Brandon, I think there's a bit of a darker side to that too. It might have something to do with vanity, right? And a desire to be right. One of the lessons that I've learned, and I'd like to say I learned this very early on, but that's not true. I learned it a little bit. It probably took me about 15 years to nail this one. It's asking myself, do I want to be right, or do I want to be a part of a team? Right? And there's such a difference in how you approach people, how you connect with people, how you think about what your role is in a discussion or a debate or an argument when you kind of frame up what your end objective is. I decided that I want to be a part of a team. So, okay, not being right. Actually, most of the time, it's fine.
I'm sure that took some patience and practice.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely took the better part of 15 years, and I still struggle with it now. I'm fortunate to be surrounded by people that remind me of my commitment to that objective.
That you're committed to being part of this team. So
don't always push to be right.
So those are some big ones. Those are hard ones. I think those are probably true for any leader. It's interesting hearing both of those. I often think it varies by person, so there's no fair way to kind of put a box on it. But it seems like a lot of those learnings happen in our 30s and 40s.
Okay.
I don't know if that was true for you, but it seems like, at least from my experience personally and even with my clients, that ability to be able to be patient, step back, pause, not react. It takes time to learn that.
Yep. You've just reminded me of one of my first projects. We can go back to that if you want, because that happened in my 20s. So I was new to consulting, and that patience to reflect was nowhere in the vicinity of me. Right. I really operated off of a sense of massive urgency. Whatever the problem was, I've got to fix it very quickly. Everything, to me, has, I don't know, somehow I'd wired my mind to think that everything is a life or death situation. And one of my first projects, I was an analyst at Accenture, and my manager came to me and said, okay, this has got to be done. We've got to get these things communicated out to hundreds of branches, bank branches, within 24, 48 hours. Figure it out. My figure it out mind was just go figure it out. And I think the approach I took was to proceed to launch hundreds and hundreds of FedEx packages to bank branches all over the country, without just taking that step back and reflecting on, well, is that really going to work? Maybe we need to let the branches know this is about to happen. Maybe we need to think about the cost implications of these things. All of those things, really anything that you could imagine that would have just been resolved if I had reached out for help. If I would have reflected, reached out for help, sought the benefit of other people's experiences. And Now, I mean, to be clear, after the 48 hours had passed, I got plenty of feedback on how I could have done that better, and didn't make that mistake again. But I think there's something that hopefully happens to most of us. You mentioned your 30s and 40s. You're an expert in this field, but I think there is something true there. I don't know if it's a frontal lobe thing, Brandon, or what, but it's something that maybe we get more comfortable incrementally with being vulnerable and asking for help and taking the time to reflect.
I would hope so. Yeah. I think that's a good story to say for sure. I would hope so. So while we're on the topic, what were some of the big kind of learnings you had in your career as a leader that you've kind of embraced and today you see kind of play out in how you lead at North Highland?
Sure, you got it. We talked a little bit about the stopping the overthinking and creating these narratives, and I want to just hone in on that one a bit more. Over time, that becomes an incredibly toxic thing. It became a toxic thing for me. It didn't improve my ability to connect with the problem, connect with the people associated with the problem, and it eroded the gratitude that I had for what was here and now. So I would say that was a major lesson. The overthinking and the creating just unproductive narratives. One that I'm very fond of, this one, is the art of asking a good question. Okay, so I'm
a fan of that one too.
Yeah, questions. I now believe that questions and observations, that are articulated, they need to be bold. They need to be intentional. They need to be grounded in curiosity. They don't need to be grounded in provocation, though. So it's a very slippery slope when you seek to ask questions, and this may be somehow rooted in a Socratic method, right? When you seek to ask questions in a way that drives people to come to not just their own conclusion, but your conclusion, right? And there's a pretty selfish drive associated with that. So I've changed how I ask questions. I still slide back every now and then, but I think long and hard, it's led me, Brandon, to ask fewer questions, actually, but just ask the ones that matter the most. So phrasing questions in ways that exhibit my curiosity so I can learn more, as opposed to trying to flip some switch in that other person's mind so that they can move towards my vantage point.
Yeah, right? It's funny, I have a mentor of mine, and he taught me years ago. He said, questions are great. Art of asking great questions, so powerful. And he was trained as a therapist like I was, which is all about asking questions. But he did caution me on something that makes me think about kind of what you said there. He said, it's a very practical tip. He said, you always want to avoid opening a question with why. Because as soon as you open with why, it implies judgment.
Right.
Like, Brandon, why did you have that pocket square today?
Yeah.
Right? Then also, I'm sorry, I didn't know you didn't like my pocket square. Versus, tell me about that pocket square, which is what you asked me.
That's it.
You asked me to tell you the story of the pocket square. You didn't say, why are you wearing that?
Yeah.
But the why has this implied judgment to it, which can be more you're provoking, right? It's got that.
Be curious, not judgmental.
Yeah, it's got that. It's got that edge to it.
Yeah, it's so hard. So switching back between our work lives and our personal lives, and just being a father of 18-year-old twins, I find myself, especially whenever I have the most unproductive interactions with my daughters, they spark when I start a conversation with why. Why did you do this? Why did you do that? And no doubt I'm being judgmental. Right. But for some reason in that moment, I feel like I'm justified in my judgment. Right. We're never justified in our judgment. Right. That's another human being. Right. They're living their life. Right. And they're making their choices. It's important for us to, again, be curious, not judgmental.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah.
Have you ever watched Ted Lasso?
Oh my gosh, are you kidding me? I feel like half of everything I've learned about leadership is from Ted Lasso. Yeah.
So there's that great scene where he's in, and he challenges Rupert to the darts.
The darts, yes.
And he says, "Be curious, not judgmental." And it's a beautiful scene. If, for listeners who haven't seen it, you gotta just go to YouTube and type in Ted Lasso darts, and it really speaks to your point. And just asking those questions, not placing assumptions on people. Yeah. Okay, so I've got more questions about leadership today, but before I do it. Any final learnings you've had along your career before I start to ask you about leading today?
Final learnings about leadership. I've got a lot of them, but I think it's important to be authentic in leadership and to know who you are, right? And know where you're leading from, the truth that you stand in. So when I know that I have become most effective, Brandon, in my leadership abilities once I embraced who I am as an individual, right? And kind of, so I would love to share a little bit about that. So the first thing that people will notice about me when they get to know me is that I'm a girl dad, right? That's who I am. I quote Taylor Swift, right?
Do you have a T-shirt that says "Girl Dad" on it?
No, but I need to have one, right? I need to have one, right? I'll get just to go down a personal path here, right? So I'm the son of Iranian Baha'i immigrants. I'm an immigrant myself. We left Iran in the 70s.
Was that closely related to when the Shah lost power?
Yes.
Was it like immediate?
It was not. So we left in around 1975. The revolution really kicked into gear in 79, and then the hostage crisis took place from 79 to 81. So we left a few years before, but the writing was on the wall. It had very quickly become a country that was no longer accepting of or a safe place for a fair amount of the population that lived in Iran, and for Baha'is, it was absolutely not a place to live and survive. Certainly not prosper. All of our citizenship rights had been taken away once the revolution had really solidified. So being a part of the Iranian diaspora to the West comes with a lot of interesting experiences. The amazing experience, right? We talk about lived experiences and diversifying experiences. That lived experience of leaving a country to become an American, right? There's so much energy and excitement associated with that. That fills so much. I realize now, after years of self-reflection, that fills so many of the reasons why I do X, Y, and Z. I cherish the fact that I live in a country that where there is possibility of life and possibility of opportunity and possibility of my family being able to do great things and again have great experiences. Once I realized that was my origin story, and that's what drove the decisions, that's what drives, subconsciously, I was able to move that experience from just something that was deep within me to something that shows up every day in terms of how I want to be seen, how I want to be recognized, how I want to recognize others. There's along with that came, I think that's where where I developed my sense of empathy. As well, which I think, again, is one of my most powerful tools. I'd say self-awareness is first, and then empathy is my second most powerful tool as a leader. Without having lived through, really, I think it's a delicate balance of discrimination and acceptance throughout, certainly in my early adult childhood and early adulthood. That created a sense of empathy within me that drove, it gave me the diversifying experiences to recognize that a strategy of engagement is far more effective than a strategy of isolation, right? So I can speak on that a little more. It's, you can solve problems by separating people, creating hub and spoke leadership and management models, running a business in ways that just keeps everyone in their place, right? Avoidance of conflict, and separate, people being apart, has some efficiencies in some mindsets. It made it impossible for me to think like that. What I realized as I became more in tune with my life experience as an immigrant, the only way I was able to move forward in my life was through the willingness and the care of others who believed in integration and unification, right? I'm the beneficiary of I'm in an interracial marriage, right? That's an opportunity that I cherish. It wasn't too long ago. I think, remember, it was either in the late 60s, maybe, or early 70s, but I think late 60s, when it was formally allowed for interracial couples to marry. So it's really the culmination of those things that when you look at, if you were to look at what my leadership philosophies are and how I manage, I am obsessed with bringing people together, with unifying and integrating in order to achieve whatever that next change or whatever that next transformation is going to be.
So first, beautiful. Thank you for sharing that part of your story and how that has shaped kind of who you are and who you want to be and show up as. So now if we fast forward to today, man, there sure is a lot of isolation going on today in workplaces. And part of it is post-pandemic, and let's try out this virtual work from home thing. But the result is, while some people may say they like it, it's still isolation. I would consider myself an introvert in the beginning of the pandemic. I thought, oh, this is great. Like, I'm not commuting. But boy, it sure does test your introvertedness, because you start to feel not connected, disconnected. So how have you found ways to bring that best part of you, that part of who you are and who you want to be in the world, and bring people together, integrate, connect, when there is so many forces kind of keeping us isolated or disconnected?
Sure. My first instinct is to actually push back on your assumption that the separation, right, has actually has made it more difficult. So I'm an insane introvert. Like, I'm really, really introverted. I don't know if that's obvious just by interacting with me, but if you're an introvert and I'm an introvert, that's probably why we click. But what I have found in the hybrid world is that new perspectives, new talent, people who I didn't have visibility into. There's something about the remote dynamic and the Teams or Zoom, whichever tools you use, the way it closes the gap in being able to see each other, right, more directly. So I found a boost from that. But more importantly, I've also experienced that the dynamic of working with each other in these digital tools. It's also solved the issue of the quiet people not being able to create their own, or not being able to bring their own voice forward. I think, Brandon, what I think I know what I'm getting at here. So for most people, I think especially people who operate throughout their careers with a sense of privilege, right? It's easier for them to be together in a room and find their voice, right? For people who have not developed throughout their careers operating with that sense of privilege, and let's be frank, right? Women and underrepresented minorities, so people of color, but it is even more distant. I think the distance has always been there. That separation has always been there when you're in a room and you don't feel comfortable or appreciated in a way that allows you to raise your hand or voice your opinions. I have seen more diverse opinions raised and voiced in this post-pandemic era, in this hybrid model, than ever before.
Fascinating. Yeah. So do you see it in just getting very, very tactical, do you see it in like how people comment in the chats? Is it people actually coming off mute and making a comment? In what way do they feel they are comfortable and want to bring their voice to the conversation?
Sure. The chats, absolutely. The most powerful, let me speak for myself here. So I felt at points in my career, even at the senior level, what's the best way for me to get my voice out, right? This feature of raising your hand, this digital hand that you can raise, it's an incredibly powerful one. something about the etiquette of communicating through these digital tools. People stop. People recognize that you have something to say. So I think that's a significant feature of it. I think there's also the habit that you start to form whenever you have these types of these Zoom or Teams meetings where you are able to zoom in whenever someone's talking. There's these features that really direct your attention wholeheartedly at the person who is sharing their perspective, and you get to see that person. You get to see their emotion. You get to see, so it's not just on the phone. You get to see how they feel about what they're sharing. And we've so at North Highland, we've been just incredibly focused on advancing our DEI objectives. So many of our sessions that we have, company-wide sessions, are centered around our employee resource groups, ERGs, and to see the kind of courage that comes forward, I think it's a bit of a avalanche effect, right? So as diverse people see other diverse people stepping into bold conversations, sharing their perspectives, it builds on itself. And whereas the type of interactions we've had, pre-pandemic and during maybe some of the early parts of the pandemic, where those examples of boldness in the moment and speaking up, you're really limited to your local team, the teams that you're working most closely with. Now we have teams, global teams, where you can be the beneficiary. You can get that inspiration from someone who is thousands of miles away, that you would have, under normal circumstances, never seen act in those bold ways. It's inspiring you. I don't know. I feel like I may be rambling a bit, but I hope I'm getting
I like this, because what you're doing is you're providing another angle and another spin on what I said. You said actually technology's created more of a flattening.
Yes.
Similar equal tools, equal kind of rights in the room to a certain degree, and you can hear voices that are across the pond that maybe you wouldn't have normally heard if you were working on your local project team in traditional consulting, where you're staffed on a project and you're there kind of Monday through Thursday kind of deal. So there's a different way to have voices heard, share information, and you even mentioned feel inspired by different people and their life experiences. All right, so I know we're getting close here to time, believe it or not.
Sure.
So if we start to think about leadership today, and if you had, whether it's a magic wand you could wave, or a piece of advice, or whether it's a tactic or strategy that you'd want to offer to leaders today, what should leaders be thinking about that is so needed and necessary from leaders that it's just going to not only make their businesses and organizations better, but just make the world a better place?
It's hard to come up with just the one thing, but I'll try. Okay. I may bolt on a few things that make a difference here. First thing that comes to mind, I probably mentioned this earlier on. Not everything is a problem to be solved. Okay, so not everything is a problem to be solved. You've got to ask yourself, what's going to happen if the situation that you're seeing is problematic, just stays a problem a little bit longer, right? And if you pause for that moment, right, and there may be a couple of moments, if you pause for those moments, you may just realize that it's something that will resolve itself, right? Or on a more personal level, it may be that problem is associated with someone who is going through something very difficult in that moment, and it's a people challenge, and it's not a problem. So again, it's not a problem that needs to be solved, and in that instance, it may be a person that needs to be cared for, right? Mm-hmm. So if you just take that moment, give yourself the grace, give others the grace to benefit from that pause. Maybe a close second to that one. Impact over intent. I learned about this just recently from one of my coaches. That my intention, like say in my communication, for example, and what I'm trying to inspire a team to move towards, my intention may be good, but if my delivery doesn't take into consideration how that message is going to land on them, how they're going to associate a sense of belonging to that vivid picture of the future that I'm trying to build for them. That intent can be good, but the impact isn't there, and a negative impact could drive them even further away from trusting in this future that I'm trying to build for them. So impact over intent. Focus on the impact, not just, my intent was good.
So I love that, because you also remind us, just because we may hold a leadership title, whether that's manager to CEO, doesn't mean that everyone should absolutely trust us.
That's right.
And that we need to still continue to be thoughtful and earn that trust in the way we interact.
Trust must be earned every day.
I've got a curveball question for you.
Yeah, go for it.
It's a big one.
Okay.
Do you think it's easier or harder to live out those two mantras as a leader at work versus a parent at home?
Far easier. I don't know. This is so easy for me. Work is far easier than at home. I think I'm realizing more and more that this idea of compartmentalizing, and another one of my coaches has been teaching me this, that this idea of compartmentalizing work and home and family is just, it's impossible, right? We're humans. We don't have two separate brains, right? We don't have two separate sets of emotions, right? So what I find is that it is considerably easier to achieve the near impossible at work. At home, I think there's such a sense of investment. So we've both got teenagers, and to think about every action, every thought, every decision, every comment, either consciously or subconsciously, is pinned to this 18-year, loving relationship and investment that you've made in these amazing people that you want to be even more amazing than they are now, right? Or more amazing than I ever was, and I ever will be. And it introduces so many different emotions and thoughts that are counterproductive to actually helping people move forward and helping people benefit from leadership. So I hope I answered that question.
No, absolutely. And that's when I was thinking too, because you're so emotionally invested at home as a parent. So it's a lot harder to step back and say, I'm not going to fix that. I want to fix that. I could fix that, but I'm just going to let them deal with the consequences, for example. Or think about, while my intent is good, I got to be really thoughtful about my delivery. Yeah. Both how, but even when, and maybe even if I deliver that message.
Yeah, I've got a hack for you on that one. Right, something that's been
ready.
Helpful. Okay, so don't split people. Okay, so we just explain what I mean. Don't split people. People are not either all good or all bad. Right? Don't seek to understand what a person's motives are in a way that leads you down the path of making that assumption that, listen, they're never going to get it. They're never going to change, right? Hold out hope, have hope that they're constantly evolving, and then have the belief in yourself, right? That you can inspire them, you can activate them to become whatever the best version of themselves they want to be and they can be. Right.
I love that. I love that. It reminds me, I'm smirking and smiling when early on when I was a therapist, and I'm thinking to myself, I can change anybody. Yeah. And then I went through this season as a therapist and then executive coach. I can't change anybody. And now I'm in this place where I'm like, let people surprise you.
Yes.
You invest and let them surprise you.
I really like how you just framed that up. That's great.
Well, in many cases, they will.
Yeah.
They will. People that you thought were always in this one way and stuck in this place one day can show up differently. And you want to give them space and grace for that.
Very well said. Well, thank you.
Navid, this was great.
My pleasure.
Fantastic.
Had a lot of fun.
Thank you for sharing not only your personal story and journey, but how that has woven into how you lead today. And your passion is evident. And it's obvious what you're trying to do and having success at in North Highland, and how as you're leading today. And kind of blending all those things and integrating all those things of who you are into the real challenges today. So thank you for sharing all those insights with us. I really, really appreciate it.
Thank you for being curious.
I found Navid's story absolutely fascinating. I'm sure you did too. I really took away a few main highlights from our conversation. First, I loved his early learnings in his career around not overthinking things, not letting things kind of stay in his head, overthink, really challenging those things, and most importantly, as he said, physically stopping himself from reacting or responding, learning that level of patience. And he then backs this up later where he talks about genuine curiosity, learning how to ask questions and listen rather than jump to premature conclusions. And of course, early in our careers, we get paid to jump quickly to conclusions. So learning how to back off and how that's contributed to him as a leader. I also loved his general direction around being authentic to who you are and really not only honoring his story and his history about where he's been, but finding ways to do that in others and then create spaces so others feel like they can not only share their story, but their voice matters. And I loved how he even challenged me on even the new world we live in virtually. While we're not in person with people as much, the tools at our disposal can actually help to allow more voices, more perspectives to be heard. Well, I'm sure you took away just as many notes, if not more, from our conversation. With all of the Leadership Foundry podcasts, the goal is for you to think of one thing you heard today that you can start putting in place tomorrow that's going to make you a better leader for your team.